本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's May 27th, 2022, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 485. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Hello.
Renata Price.
Howdy.
And our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
So it has been an eventful week in the games industry. Patrick and I ended up writing a piece about some really exciting news that came out of the ongoing, unionization drive and labor confrontation at Raven Software. Patrick, you want to talk through the latest developments in what happened with the ongoing saga of Raven's QA department?
The high level is, some months back they decided they wanted to form a union, but then you still have to do a proper vote in order for that to become sort of formalized, and that vote has to be a majority. A tie goes to Activision Blizzard, I guess, or the original structure. That vote happened. It was 19-3, pretty overwhelming in favor of forming the union. There were, I believe, 2 or 3 votes that were, I forget what's the phrasing they use, where the
Abstain?
Not abstain, where there's a dispute over the votes. Whatever the case, it was overwhelming in favor. The QA team at Activision, or at Raven Software, a subsidiary under Activision Blizzard that largely works on Call of Duty Warzone as a support studio. That QA team has decided to formally unionize, and the next step for them will be the long protracted process of negotiating a contract. But it is not the first union in video games. That is something that does occur internationally, not with necessarily regularity, but there are different countries that have much stricter and better labor laws and practices, in which there are unions within Ubisoft, like in France. But it's not common in the United States specifically. Was it Vodio Games, I believe, was the small studio that did Bashbreaker and a couple other things. They formed a union with the blessing of the owner of the studio last year, but that's a small indie team, and that's not to take away anything from what they did, but finding a crack in the giant corporate structure, especially one like Activision Blizzard that is about to be, go through the process of probably being owned by Microsoft, having a union, regardless of what happens next, formed, voted on, and to be so overwhelming and then celebrated, I think is a really important moment in video games and video game labor relations. It's an industry that has just exploited people for decades, and this doesn't fix that. But it's, I don't know, especially in a week that was pretty fucking bleak. Stuff like that, and, little things that you can hold on to that, show signs of potential progress, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, we so if you check out the site waypoint.vice.com, Patrick and I did sort of a back and forth on it. And one thing you brought up is, of course, this is part of a broader wave of unionizations at major companies. But you brought up Starbucks, which I think is a really good example, because in some ways, if you think about the initial Starbucks unionization that happened, it was similarly what really is one shop in Starbucks, right? You read about the small number of people in that first vote. What difference is that really going to make? But now Starbucks is confronting waves of unionization votes that are sort of happening at various
and not just in the coast, right? That's part of what you're seeing, is that it's expanding,
right,
regionally outside of places that you would just comfortably say, well, there's probably lots of pocket leftists that are, would make it more likely in places like a San Francisco or New York. And yeah, it's a spark that hopefully lights a fire. And we're seeing that more and more at Starbucks, even as they do, one of the things we talked about in the article was, Starbucks is out here being well, it's too bad these unionized stores, we're finally going to start offering
we had
better
all this
benefits.
money we wanted to give away.
But we just can't, we can't give that to the union stores because, oh my God, there's fucking contract we got to work out with them. That's just not, we're just not going to be able to offer it to them. And so, one of the things I thought was, I wonder, will we see something similar happen with well, actually, Apple just did this as well. Apple is also going through some early unionization efforts. I don't think any of them have been successful in terms of forming a union, but they did the same thing that Starbucks did, which is geez, inflation's tough out there. We got to start paying our retail workers better wages. And it's wow, convenient. The moment they're losing the union votes, and yet suddenly they've decided right now is the moment they have to pay a bunch of workers not the money they deserve, but more than they were getting before. And so my thought was, do we see something similar from Activision Blizzard, or is the scrutiny from regulators, from the state of California, sort of scare them off? And one of the things that you put forth, Rob, that was a really sort of poignant and kind of when you look through how Activision Blizzard has positioned themselves and postured themselves, is they already seem to be on the back foot, and they kind of seem like they're already scared, and the tactics they're taking are not necessarily one that inspire much fear.
Yeah. I can also say, as someone who worked at a Starbucks as recently as a year ago, I think that the interesting thing about the general trend in unionization that we're seeing right now is that people will just talk about it in a store. Like the amount of people talking about, oh yeah, unionization is an option for us, was even happening back when I was working there a year or so ago. And I think that there's an entire generation of people who have a relatively different perspective on unions, and a much more positive perspective on unions, because there was that, a significant period where, union slander was the standard for US education policy and also US discourse. And so now you have this entire generation of people who has kind of, one, dodged that, and two, is generally irritated. And so what you get is, unless someone's actively a neocon or something, most people I know are in favor of unionizing their workplace, even if they are not a particularly leftist person, in a way that is surprising and a difference from even 3 years ago.
Yeah, I would say part of it is when we talked about just labor conditions or various fast food discussions, right? But the sheer amount that has changed in those spaces from Patrick, when you and I were working jobs like that, right? Where the things that were pretty low key, yeah, the pay was shitty, but also you could really half-ass these jobs. They weren't that hard. They weren't that bad. The amount of regimentation,
trash talking the skills of my taking groceries and putting them into a bag. Please.
I mean, for me, this nothing will touch the salad days of being a cart boy out in the parking lot. Just running carts back from the corrals back up to the store, and then going around the corner and just hanging out with the other cart guys, being
was that a dedicated job? I feel I had to do that. That was more just, hey, no one's in your lane. Could you go outside and do the carts? One time I found $100 and it's wow, I should keep this. And I didn't, but my manager said, if it's still here at the end of the day, you can have it. And I was wow. Okay. And so I turned it in. I got that $100 fucking dollars. It's I need to push carts more often.
Well, I will say that I always remember Jewel Osco's as being slightly smaller stores. I worked at Ultra Foods, RIP, in Hammond, Indiana, and that place had a huge parking lot. And so you needed cart guys out there because after the rush, most of your carts would slowly gravitated toward the edges of the parking lot and the runoff ditch that bordered it. So you really needed to have guys running out there. But my point is, though, that a lot of jobs have gotten significantly harder and maybe arguably more degrading in the last 15, 20 years. And so I think, a lot of, Ren, when you allude to the pretty standardized union bashing that was common in the United States, I think so much of it was just this kind of complacency where you had labor conditions that were kind of coasting along on the back of previously won victories in labor. And for me, I still look at like kind of 2008 as kind of a sea change where suddenly the labor market's really tight. Employers have a lot of power. There's more technology that allows you to regiment and like supervise your workforce. And I feel like in the last like 10, 15 years, all the things that were claimed about, like, you don't want a union between you and your employer. It's just so inefficient. The employer, like, they're not bad people. They're going to take care of you. Just like trust them. That was predictably proven to be a pack of lies. But I think, now here in 2022, everyone just kind of like knows that's the score, right? Whereas I think like 10, 15 years ago, even, you would still have a sort of deference to just kind of like, management's not that bad. The job's fine. We don't need a union. I think there are a lot of people who, you look at the sheer number of like, not just pay, the sheer number of like shitty things happening in your, at your workplace, and you realize union could address a lot of it.
I mean, if you think about like, again, this was also something we touched on in the piece, is like, I grew up, especially like Cado, Rob and I grew up essentially not like as like unions collapsed, but if you think about what were most people's experiences with the union, it wasn't at their jobs. It was when the teachers threatened to go on strike. It was when the only reason you heard about a union was when on the news you heard, well, teachers might not be there next week. You better figure out something else to do with your kids. And not, hey, the teachers are like wildly underpaid. Isn't it weird how they have to do funding drives just to get like pencils into the classroom? Like that seems kind of fucked up. And so the way unions, we're not like actively around the dinner room table, but like how I heard about them, my 2 times hearing about them when I was younger was working at the Jewel Osco at a grocer in which I made pennies, and then some of those pennies went to a union, and I was never given a pitch on like, why does this help me? Well, it wasn't really there for me anyway. Like it was for the people who are like long-term employees at this job. But my attitude amongst the fellow teens was just like, great. So we give our money to our managers, so they have cushier jobs. And how does that help me during the summer? And because you weren't sit down and like given a pitch on like, well, here's what a union does, like here, yada yada. And then beyond that was just hearing my parents gripe about it when like there was like a potential for that to impact their lives, and what are we supposed to do with our kids? That's that sort of thing. And so I think for a lot of people, that is their experience with unions. Like the big shift in the last 10 years is, like personally speaking, like, all of the unionization that's happened in like sort of our media circles started while I worked at Kotaku, and they unionized under Gawker. Like Gawker started it, and then a bunch of other people unionized afterwards. And like that's where I re-encountered unions as an adult. Was, oops, I happened to find myself at the like ground floor of a modern unionization effort in a sector that desperately needed it. And now I've been in a union for almost 10 years. And even in times where I've thought about leaving this job and going somewhere else, like frequently one of the first thoughts is like, well, I would want to go somewhere where there was a union. If there wasn't, like, maybe I'll just stay here because I like how I get a regular pay bump every year and don't have to ask my managers, please, could I have a cost of inflation?
It's wild. I remember my dad worked at Publix, which is technically owned by the employees. And that being like
I have a question. Technically, like, that's the thing, right? Because I know a few employee-owned places that, like, we're really real generous with the definition of like employee.
It's like you technically did have stock, but it was never enough that all the employees would ever outnumber the board and the owning family. So like, it was more like technically when you leave eventually, if they've vested, which then you get into like how long it fucking takes for those stocks to vest. So you have to be there for a certain amount of time before you could technically sell them back to the family so that they control more of the company once you leave. Just as an aside, this is a little bit how the Green Bay Packers football team sells fucking quote stock to their fans, which is really so they can show up to a shareholders meeting, which is really just
a fan gathering and a way of them like raising money for the already very expensive, like luxurious football team to just have more fun. And Packers fans, I know them. They put this, they fucking frame it and they put it in their rooms. And like and I don't even say I wouldn't do it if I had the chance, but it strikes me very much like that. It's like, no, you're part of the team. No, you're not. Like, you absolutely are not.
And especially remembering a time when like that was like, wow, you're basic that was like, why would you need a union? You basically own part of the company. To just this March, REI, another company that runs that way, right? The thought is that REI, like all the workers own it. A New York City REI unionized, right? Like it's like that scam isn't working anymore even, right? Like that very lucrative sounding scam has fallen under the idea of like, look, actually we should still have a union even though technically we own quote unquote part of the company. And like that seems like a big shift, right? Like there were these tricks that used to work kind of across the board that people are like getting savvy to essentially.
Well, I'll just say this. I always felt like the employee-owned thing, because this is certainly what it was. There's I think it was called Woodman's in the college town I went to in like Alton, Wisconsin, where they were like, we're employee-owned. And that drew people to the store, right? It's like, yeah, I feel good supporting this company. The same way like saying something's American-made could be a really prized thing to like slap on a product. Maybe we're being kind of generous about the definition of like what was actually made at a like factory in the United States versus what like was received at a final assembly factory. But like like at that store, I definitely know that like you talk to employees there, and they were very aware that like that fucking employee owned banner, it wasn't for them, right? Mm-hmm. It was for the people coming in to buy.
Right.
Rob, can I read from the Woodman's Markets Wikipedia page under the employee benefits section? Despite the company being employee owned, Phil Woodman, of Woodman's Markets, created controversy in December 2009 by eliminating the company's mental health coverage, complaining that patients could rack up uncontrolled costs for the company. Woo!
Yeah, that's therapy, bro.
Employee owned.
You're telling me, Phil. Yeah, I think some of those tricks like would work better. But I will also say, Patrick, like you can't leave out as sort of the story of like union decline how discrediting of unions a bad union could be.
Yeah,
like part of this was
police unions, teachers unions, not all.
But even like. Well, teachers' unions are a decent example. I saw my mom go through this, right? Like, over the course of her career as a teacher in Indiana, things went from, like, mediocre to bad to, like, abysmal. And I think right now it's, like, somewhere around apocalyptic in terms of, like...
It's really bad.
Their ability to recruit teachers is, like, in the toilet.
To give like some insight, my mom was also a teacher. She was a middle school teacher through most of my life, has been like moved around grades like 3 times, has changed from a 7th grade teacher to an 8th grade teacher to like a 7th grade teacher again, because you just can't hire new people. It doesn't work. The teaching market right now is really, really bad. My high school had, I would say, 3 or 4 new teachers a year every year, because the turnover rate for getting someone in that was new was just like ridiculously high. The market is absolutely fucking broken, as you were saying, Rob.
Yeah, and so like I think with unions sometimes there's also a bit of the thing about like generational wealth, where the first generation like makes the money, the second generation enjoys the money, and the third generation loses the money. I think that can happen a little bit with like labor organizing as well, because like in contrast to like the energy and like solidarity I see in like, for instance, our union, what my mom was seeing as like they were really putting the screws to teachers unions in Indiana, like across the board, just in terms of like trying various forms of like administrative tricks to like get like basically perform wage theft, and then trying to get the union to just eat that in the next contract, so there wasn't like retroactive pay required, doing things like going after like teacher pension funds as a source of like capital you could lay your hands on. But the thing that attended all of this was, and I don't know if it was like this at every teachers union around Indiana. I only have like this little bit of like insight into what was happening in the Chicago teachers union, which was that the people running that union were completely demoralized careerists. And the two components of that were, one, they had no conviction. They had no conviction that like any labor action could succeed. They didn't want any kind of labor action. And a lot of them were hoping that if they were good little like partners to the like school administration, that they might move over into management and like become part of school administration. And so like over the course of like, I would say 10 years, things got really abysmal at a job my mom loved. But attending all of it was the fact that when the union had moments to say, like, are we going to take this? The people in charge of negotiating were coming in completely like, you know, slump shouldered, being like, guys, I know it's like, we just gotta, you know, we did the best we could. We just have to take this. I promise you there's no more money, you know, on the table. We have to accept this contract. And if they ever like failed a vote, which at one point they did, like they brought a contract that was a real piece of shit to the union. My mom like went through it in detail and like illustrated why it was so bad, and it lost the vote pretty overwhelmingly. So they scheduled another vote at a more inconvenient time on a new contract that was like single line item modified. And they ran it through with like their supporters there, and like got the union to take this. And the thing we now know is, of course, teachers unions, even as demoralized as they can be, when they actually move, they can really like create an earthquake in the politics around their issues and the politics of a state or a city.
Well, we saw that in a couple of red states a couple years back, right?
Like
there was
West
a wave
Virginia,
of education strikes that had, like, they basically just ground the education system to a halt and managed to make, I don't know if the contracts were great, but they were better than where they were, because they took group collective action and really showed like what happens if you take all the teachers out of the equation. There's nobody show up.
Well, exactly. Like, and that's the thing, right? Is like, I think unions got really gun shy about, increasingly like had baked in their contract, like, you know, promise you guys won't walk off, promise you guys won't strike, as part of the union contract. But I will say, like, part of the story of like union decline is that you had a union leadership that no longer had any taste for the fight. And once that happens, it is really hard to understand, like, why the fuck am I paying these dues?
Right.
Like, why am I in this? And that becomes like that can sort of like help the death spiral along. I think that's gonna be the next step of like the unions forming is step one. And then step two is like, they're gonna have to get some decent contracts out of this and like be like vigilant around them. We aren't there yet. Right now, like, there's so much more organizing that has to happen. The fact that, you know, Activision seems to be drawing a map to the rest of Raven about like the need for a wall-to-wall union is an interesting choice. But this notion,
because I think they initially attempted to, I forget the exact mechanism they tried to pull, but they essentially, when the QA team said we're going to unionize, Activision tried to appeal that, no, actually you can't, the team inside Raven can't do that. If you want to unionize, you need to put it to a studio vote. It needs to be the entire developer. And they were denied that. And then the QA team was allowed to go forward. You know, then that's, you know, that's still Activision's position, is that, well, you are now, you're making the lives harder of all of your good colleagues around you. But whether they actually turn the screws to try and make the rest of the studio hostile to them, you know, those are steps that, you know, they could take. We've seen things like that happen in places like Activision and Starbucks, but I you know, whether they would actually take those sorts of steps given the environment that they're in right now, it's hard to imagine other than like trying to just do these public statements and hoping that the union just runs out of gas. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to remain optimistic that there's something not going to try and, especially because they just also went through the whole bit where they reorganized the QA team, and rather than having be their own stack, they are like more horizontally integrated with the company, which is common. It happened at a very convenient time for Activision to say that, well, geez, they're not their own team because they're integrated with everybody else now. But that is common and accepted as like a better way of doing QAs. QAs work alongside design, art, programming to flag things as development is going on, rather than just, here's a broken build of the game, could you figure out what's wrong? So how they would even manage to do that, I don't know, but I am curious. I don't even know, once the unions form, how long does it even take before a contract starts? I don't know exactly how that. I'm kind of asking that into the wind, but I
feel like it can take a while, because like
I feel like it can take a while too.
Like I think that Amazon warehouse is still in negotiation, and obviously Amazon has a lot of incentives to drag the process out as long. And I think that's true. Gonna be doubly true at Activision. Ren, you had something.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about the ways in which, because you were talking about the restructuring of the QA team, which is like common practice in the industry, but the ways in which, like, I think part of the other roadblock for unionization, but also one of the things that's driving it right now, is the shift in like the technology of corporate management, both in terms of like literally like the systematization of corporations, like we were talking about with fast food services and fast food industries, but also with like corporations' understandings of systems of power and the systems of power that they specifically create, and organizing people into locations that are built to dissuade actual organizing practices. Amazon has a ton of practices like this, including like encouraging employees not to talk on their breaks. And like the history of labor has a ton of these things throughout, but I think that we are seeing a reinvigoration of practices that had fallen out of favor or had like slipped into the annals of corporate memory, that I find very interesting.
Yeah, I think, and I do wonder how, and this is, you can read the exchange that Patrick and I had, but like, on the one hand, they've got a pretty large bag of dirty tricks that they can pull from. On the other hand, to borrow a line from All the President's Men, these are not very bright guys.
No.
And like, and like the reason that becomes notable is like, you look at how much money they pour on consultants, right? And like at Amazon, the consultants were like, what you should do is parachute in random managers from different facilities to go lecture your Long Island workers about like how good they have it just like working for Amazon. And like, Lauren Cowrie Gurley like wrote up, like when that transcript leaked, it's incredibly awkward to listen to. It is like this completely astroturfed attempt to be like, how do you do, fellow Amazon workers, from guys who are different, like different community, different circumstances. And it doesn't carry off. But like there's so much grifting in corporate land, and it sort of starts at the top, that a lot of times the people that like their solution to a lot of things is like, okay, we better bring in consultants to figure out how we're going to do this. The consultants are grifters too. They are just there to like collect a huge paycheck to like tell you how to like deal with your employee unrest. And a lot of times, and I think this was the recipe that like did really lead to a lot of like union decline, was that throughout the 90s, if a rising tide like floated all boats, people were not going to sweat too much like who was getting what slice of the pie, etc. Like if workers felt like, outside of labor union, if they still felt like we're making decent bank here and there's decent like upward mobility, we'll be really sympathetic to management's arguments. And if management had ever like just let enough crumbs fall off their table down to the employees, they wouldn't be in this situation, right? But now it is a case where I do feel like everything they're trying to do is like so belated and also like so nakedly manipulative that I don't think it's like as slick as it needs to be. because at this point, as Ren was saying earlier, like once employees are sort of openly talking about like, a union might help with some of this. Maybe the store needs a union. Like you've already kind of missed your best window to address the underlying causes. And I think that's like triply true at Activision, where like it's been a solid 2 years now of showing like announcing layoffs while cackling to your investors about how much profit the company is making. Your senior leadership being like unmasked in public as creeps and pests. I would say Activision is probably uniquely vulnerable to this just because there's so many factors that have piled up, and the people who are making the appeal to like, hey, hey, employees, you don't need a union, are pretty largely discredited.
Because what we're supposed to trust you haven't fixed up the other parts of the broken house. Why should we expect you to fix up this one? And yeah, that's a really compelling argument.
I guess sort of related. We are in not just not just a banner year for narrative games, but also there's a lot of games about like labor relations.
About labor, yeah.
And I guess in some ways some similar conceit stuff to Citizen Sleeper. Patrick and Ren, you've been playing Hardspace Shipbreaker, which similarly has a notion of you are somebody who's this is still a conceit, right? In final launch version, you are basically a clone that is working off their corporate debt by working in a breaker's yard, salvaging ships.
Is there a full like cinematic intro for that? So this game came out in early access like a year and a half ago. It is now hitting 1.0. I watched the trailer for it and was like, this seems cool and chill and interesting. And they're like, hey, we're also going to do a campaign that's like really satirical and interesting and political. And I was like, okay, well, I'll wait for that, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then it hit 1.0. And so, Ren, you've played this before. Yeah. Okay, before I comment on like how the game opens for me, like how does the game set the context for itself in the past?
So the introductory sequence where there's an introduction sequence where basically your character signs a contract. You go through and they give you a bunch of like different contract things where it's like, okay, do you agree to this? Type in your name. There's like little bits and jokes in there.
Hold on. I need to read some of them. I took a screenshot because it was, there's even a whole section where there's a terms of service that is so long, and they're preying on the thing that terms of services prey on all of us, which is like, you don't want to read this. This is like a lot of legalese. And I implore you, please read it. There is a lot of exceptional writing in there, but this, contract that Ren is discussing, I'm going to paste it into our Discord.
Extremely funny.
Yeah.
Is extremely funny. It says things like, please agree to each statement. I have no criminal record in the Terran or Martian zones. A record in the Jovian frontier is acceptable. I am not a member of, I have never been associated with a workers' union or other labor interest. I have completed my annual medical exam and have been cleared of having McCullough's lung. I have no commercial or real estate interest on Luna, in the asteroid belt, or in the nation state of Arizona.
That's why they have a different time zone.
I will bring a positive attitude and a problem-solving mindset to work every day. I understand and accept the health risks associated with long-term exposure to van der Waals field. I will vote for Chancellor Chung Zhang in the Pan-American Senate election. And like, those are all the things you have to agree to alongside like various things that are associated in terms of service before you get to the next part, Ren.
The other thing that I really love is that when you name yourself, there is a rule about not having any anti-corporate phrasing within your name. Which I think is very
will they reject
funny.
some names?
Yes, they will. They will 100% reject names that involve you being like "fuck Lynx Corporation." If you say anything about the Lynx Corporation, your name gets rejected. It's really, really funny.
Amazing.
Like if you named yourself Jeffrey Union, they would be like, "No, nah, Jeff. This one ain't for you, buddy." And then afterwards, you go and start doing training as a shipbreaker.
Okay, but hold on. Okay, so when you do that, at least what happens in the 1.0 is that so there is a process. Like, yes, you are a clone, but the way the Lynx Corporation works is that they're going to extract your genetic data, and then we're like, death is no longer a problem. Like workplace accidents, no big deal. We will actually, while you're dying, we can create a clone of you in real time and just shift your brain over there. But there's a whole sequence where they reveal at the last second, at least to the player. I didn't pick up on this, that, hey, so my thought was like, oh, right, I guess it makes sense in this like dystopia that they're doing, that they're going to extract my genetic material so that I can be cloned in the future. But then they're like, and by the way, the extraction will kill you. And then there's a whole sequence where you like watch as your character like screams as like the genetic material is extracted from them, and then you die and wake up as a laborer, and going, as you go about your workday. It's a scene played. There's a real fine line between like if a game like Soma, playing in similar sort of spaces, at least thematically about like what is the mind and like what happens with cloning and like moving the brain and things like that, is played extremely dark. Like this one is played for laughs, but that sequence in particular was like heinous, like deeply uncomfortable. And then it's just like, boom, now back to the chipper corporate satire, machine that the game has as its kind of aesthetic running through its writing and its art, and it's fucking awesome.
It is. It rides its tone really, really well. When I've written about it twice previously. Once when it first came out, where I wrote about the game's like the interesting, I think, class politics in some of its like literal grading systems, and like the like ship grading systems. And I also wrote about the Act 1 of its narrative, which is explicitly about unionization. The game's narrative is about unionization as a process, and Act 1 ends with basically the corporation being like, we're going to send people to oversee things because we've heard there's unionization efforts, so we will be investigating your whole shit. This is not a spoiler. This is like literally within the first 4 hours of the game. And it's like, it is the premise of the narrative, and I think it's really well done. I really love this game.
Clones are called spores. Clones are called spores. It's such a terrible name for a clone.
Spares.
And there was, I've only played like the first 90 minutes or so. And I guess if people aren't familiar with the game, like the basic setup of what you're doing is you're out dismantling ships. And so you have like lasers and grappling beams so that you can basically use on a very basic level, you're using a scanner to identify different weak points in these ships, so you can dismantle the parts specifically so that like this part goes into this collector, this part goes into that collector, and you're trying to do that in the most efficient way possible without destroying too much of the ship in the process, because the ship, because also when you go through this like genetic extraction sporing process, there's a whole sequence where the game tells you you are just enormously in debt. And then the arc of your like career is paying off that debt. I believe I also took a screenshot of the amount of debt that you're in.
$1.227 billion.
Yes, it's a lot.
Jesus. Yeah, but just for inflation, like it's, not that bad.
I have a screenshot of that too. Anyway, that is sort of like the setup of the games that you're like dismantling this stuff. And I did not realize that. So when you're throwing things into the different sort of collectors, yes, did it seem like they have some sort of gravitational pull? Yes. Did I assume that gravitational pull was related to the like different like metals items going in? It was like, this is an advanced sci-fi game. Like it would just be pulling in the stuff that I'm throwing at it. Like I'm cool. And then like I had something, because a lot of the game is you like using this grappling beam to create momentum so that you can not have to like slowly bring the thing over, but you can like rip it off the ship, like angle up a shot, swing it around, and then push it, and you can basically like fling it over into its associated disposal, and you can go back to working on the ship while you're managing your oxygen and fuel and yada yada yada. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go nudge that thing in. It didn't get collected, and it's just like, oh no, I appear to be being collected. And as my character was dying, and they're just like, it's cool, it's okay, we're building your other spore. Like, you'll just wake up in about 30 seconds. Like, bye. See, don't worry about it, bye. And I'm just like, this is fucking horrifying, but I'm also laughing the entire time.
The first time I really remember a death that stuck with me in that game was when I was working on a ship and I was trying to basically blast a side panel off, and I had thought I had hit all of the relevant cut points. And I was like squeezed up into this like passageway where like basically my character's body could barely fit in. And I was like, oh, I've got all the cut points. Let me just use a tether pulse, a grapple pulse, and basically blast this thing away. The thing is, you do not want to grapple pulse on objects that have more mass than you. Because basically what I did was I grapple pulsed and it jammed me back into the wall to the point where I became stuck in a place that the game was not supposed to let me get to. And I became stuck in the wall. And then my oxygen started ticking down. And I just had to fucking wait. And then when I finally got my new body back, I was like, okay, cool. That was heinous. That was terrifying, as I just had to sit and wait and let my oxygen tick down. I get out there and I see that the entire fucking ship has started drifting into the furnace.
Oh, one of the collectors?
Because here's the thing, the higher mass an object has, the more it is affected by those. And so the ship had just been knocked a little bit and had been drifting very quietly for about 10 minutes. And I was in the ship when I realized this, and then the whole ship with me in it just slams my character in the face and then throws us both back into the furnace. So not only did I die twice while trying to dismantle this one ship, I also lost every valuable component of the ship to being obliterated in this furnace.
I would say I do remember something I really enjoyed about this is that it does a really good job of being Industrial Accident Simulator 2022, because the thing that happens is you're like, yeah, I got this. This stuff isn't that bad. And you start like getting really casual with how you use it. You start being less like, you stop planning as much or like thinking through what you're doing. And so like the thing that got me was, I remember you can get sort of turned around and forget like which because you just start spinning around, you're whipping stuff into the furnaces, etc. And the thing that got me was I just lost track that I had because it was a really massive set of chained together objects, and I'd slowly set them drifting toward a furnace. Great, no problem. And then I zipped around and kept doing other stuff. And I did not realize that in doing all that other stuff, I had moved into the flight path of this like freight train of ship components. And it was now above me, where I had kicked it off below me. And so I was like, it's not even like it's drifting down toward the furnace, and I'm up here and it's fine. And then I see like a massive like star drive like start coming down like a window shade in my monitor, and I'm like, that's weird. And I start to look up, and it's like just complete eclipse of like ship components pasting me. And it was like, should have seen that coming, but also like I started to feel really confident about like how fast I could do this, and I was really looking to get that like extra money for getting more ship components, and just completely lost track of like what I was doing, where I was, or the fact that like these things can kill you.
One of my favorite narrative components about this game, because the way that the game's difficulty curve works, is that it introduces new hazards to the ship over time as you are cleared to take on larger and more complicated ships. So eventually it adds coolant systems, fuel pipes, coolant systems, electrical systems, and air pressurization. And these four systems all have very complex interactions with one another, and each ship has to be disassembled in a very particular way. I was playing today and got to a new ship that I didn't play when I originally like was going through the game, And these ships have 3 thrusters. These thrusters, to access them, you have to remove nose cones from the 3 massive thrusters. Like, we're talking thrusters that are the size of other ships in the game. That is how big they are, right? And so you have to take off a panel, throw the panel into your processor, cut the cut point, go to the other panel, throw it into the processor, cut the cut point. And when you do that, it does explosively depressurize.
Yep.
Because there's no way to get in there to depressurize that location. So you just have to be like, all right, time to pop off the nose cone from 50 feet back, because if I don't, I will get obliterated. And so you pop off the nose cone, you throw it in. At this point, you're like trainer, and the game comes on the radio for me, and he goes, so this is where this gets difficult. They don't send people to flush the coolant, to flush the fuel pipes before they give us the ships to salvage.
Yep.
So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut out this thruster, at which point these fuel pipes are going to ignite. And what you're going to have to do is go to the back of, you're going to have to pull out the thruster and then go in through the hole you made from pulling out the thruster to the back of the ship and pull a lever, and that will vent the fuel before you get ignited.
By the way, that's something I appreciate about this game too, is the sense of like, yeah, this is how ships are designed. This sense of like, there's the stuff that's readily accessible, like large modular parts that are meant to be like dismounted or modified or taken off for service. And then there's the parts of like the central frame of the ship that are not meant to be accessed after like the keel is laid down and the hull is sort of built. And getting to those things is really hard, but there's a whole category of like maintenance task you need to do that involves like, I need to get into that crawl space. And nobody is like, once that ship is built, nobody was ever supposed to need to get into that crawl space. And because everything's under the gun with the clock, there's usually a safe procedure you can follow to do these things. But man, you sure would get a lot more pay for this job if you could make the ship explosion work for you.
There's also a fun little narrative note that the game does is they say in one of the things where it's like, you've unlocked the Hazard Class 2 ship, and that's because we trust you. We feel like we don't need inspectors because we can just trust our shipbreakers so much to be able to properly disassemble this ship. So why would we need inspectors when we trust you, our family, to disassemble these ships? So it's so fucking good.
I'm trying to remember, isn't there also a thing about how each clone actually costs you money?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
You have to pay for the clones when you die.
So quick question. In terms of like the stuff that's here in this release, is there more narrative stuff happening? Because I remember in Act 1, there were like little logs you'd find from the ships, sort of telling some of the stories that are happening out there in the wider universe. But like as far as what was going on with my character, it kind of felt like what I was playing was a proof of concept of like what the gameplay would be, and some narrative like dressing was on that. But I'm curious if it does feel like there's more of a story being told through the full release.
I mean, I think that the like true Act 1 added a bunch of voiced characters. Let's think. It's D something Lou and Cado. Who are all characters who each have very different relationships to Lynx as a corporation, and have very different experiences, like as people working the yard and working on ships, and they will chime in and talk to you as you are disassembling ships sometimes. It's not all ships, but every once in a while, someone will call in and be like, hey, so did you know that our manager actually used to be a shipbreaker until one of his clones got fucked up? And that is the body he's now stuck with because his genetic...
Oh, that's right.
His genetic memory is now fucked, and so he can't actually work on ships anymore, because if they try and clone him again, he will be increasingly disabled over time. And so they basically had to pull him from the actual like shipbreaker like production line. And like conversations like that will happen. I'm about to start Act 2 because I ended up having to, much to my surprise, replay Act 1, but it only took me like 2 hours because I'm so familiar with the ships that it was not hard to get through the certifications required. but I'm really excited to see where they go with it, because I, at this point, trust the game's writing. Its mechanics alone have such an interesting perspective on labor that I cannot help but think that its writing, which is pretty sharp, will end up doing something really cool. I'm extremely excited about it.
It's also just a good puzzle game. Like, it's very chill. Like, I mean, look, like, yes, like, there's so much of the setting and the writing is like a very waypointy sort of thing, but like, it's just fun to just disassemble the ships. Like,
well, it's always a weird tension with games like this, right? Where it's like, we have some things to say about like the dehumanization of labor, but also this shit's got to be fun as hell. And so, like, yeah, they do a very good job walking that line, but I would agree.
Well, I mean, like, it clicks the part of it like tickles the part of my brain that used to build robots and like likes working in a machine shop. Mm-hmm. Like, I have in the same way that I have a favorite like tool in a machine shop, that being a manual mill, I also have like favorite tools that the cutters get to use and favorite ways of like interacting with different problems, because, you know, once you get used to a ship, you can be like, okay, I know 3 different ways. And this is like a thing that's true of like any manual labor job. You eventually get to a point where you're like, I know 3 or 4 different ways to approach this problem. And now I get to pick my favorite one that I think works for me personally and I feel like doing in this particular moment. And that is a really, really good feeling. And like, I also think that like, that is part of the tension in the game, is the fact that like, yeah, this shit is fun. Damn. Like, there is a world where this is a good job. Like, that the work itself is enjoyable is, to me, part of its, like, criticism, is that, like, this could be great. This could be great for everyone involved. And it is
manual labor itself does not mean it is unsatisfying. Right. Like, that's, I think, that is something that, as a society, we tend, and this is what the game is picking at, is like, oh, like, people doing manual labor, guess they're not smart enough to do, like, a real job. And it's like, actually, this shit's like really sophisticated, interesting. Like you said, Ren, tickles your brain, and like, there's something to this. It's just how we surround these people and talk about them and how we treat them and step on them. That's the problem. It's fucking fine if you you like putting together Legos, you like taking them apart. That's what this is. You're just doing it with a blowtorch and, you know, like, and other associated lasers and gadgets. And I think that's one of the ways in which its gameplay is commentary that is like on a much subtler level than like the outright satire and, you know, conversations that are happening. And I think it's a lot of what makes the game work for me, is you can play games in this space, playing with these themes that, like, it's all on the writing. Like, it's all on that. And the mechanics exist mostly just to give you something. I mean, Citizen Sleeper is also like this, right? I think it has really strong mechanics and really strong writing that work in tandem to tell a story. And that is, I think, even truer here, because the dice stuff in Citizen Sleeper it's a fun way of doing chance in a visual novel that has meters that need to fill, and it's fine. Whereas this is like, hey, like, before it had a story, this was just a really fun video game, and then they found a really smart story to layer on top of it that just takes it to a completely different level, and also, frankly, introduces it to a person like me who just, I would end up playing this for like an hour and going, well, that's cute and interesting, but like, doing this faster or more efficient is not, it's like a high score in a pinball game, like, it's not appealing to me. But you layer on a story and progression and like an arc of something, now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah. And also, like, God, the ships get so big. The puzzles get so big.
I gotta get back in on it. As soon as I stop just fucking dominating Citizen Sleeper, I'm gonna be the mayor of that space station the way I'm going.
And also, I haven't tried it yet. I'll report back to you. Maybe we can mutually report back, but it apparently runs really well on the deck. And so I'm gonna be out of town this weekend away from my computer, and as beautiful as it looks on my new PC, it does seem like the kind of game that would also be very enjoyable in a handheld form.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here and circle back to Hardspace next week.
Oh, boy.
Fucking dumb.
I absolutely know that Cado's going to leave that in.
Yeah, it's going to be in there somewhere. Gotta figure out where it's going to go somewhere.
Silly.
Hey, so just to close the loop on something real quick that I get up to of late. Patrick, you might remember that we needed to hurry up and finish the thing last week because I needed to get out of town because the AC was broken.
Because you all you wanted to do was just, you know what my partner deserves? It's just like a little mini vacation. All you're doing was thinking, I just want to treat my partner right, go up the coast a little bit. And like, no, I am not locked into a hotel that I just booked. Then 45 minutes later, it turns out I don't need it. And this hotel has draconian cancellation policies. No. You were just thinking of your partner, your family, just wanting to get away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Family man Rob's acne.
Yep.
Just trying to outdo me. Just trying to outdo me. Just,
and you know, the reason you
Rob.
don't even look at whether a booking is refundable or not is because you just want, one way or another, you're going to make that magic happen. You're going to have this vacation.
I don't want to have the option to refund it because I want to commit. I want to commit to my family. Like, given the option, that's just weakness. That's
Commit
just
to
weakness.
a belief in love, you know? Commit to a belief in human connection, you know? That's what a hotel visit's all about. That's what a hotel booking is. It's a commitment to connection.
I mean, especially one that you call and make sure y'all got HDMI cables? And they're like, yeah, we do. Do we know if they're 2.1? We don't, but that's okay.
Hey, guess what they didn't have when we checked in?
What?
HDMI cables.
You didn't bring one?
The lady at the desk had assured me they had them.
Oh, I never would have trusted that. I would have absolutely.
I would laugh in their face.
So you didn't get to Elden the Ring?
Hold on. There was a Walgreens in town that had HDMI. We bought the last HDMI cable in Camden.
Did you not ask for the person who you talked to on the phone?
I'm not sure the person I talked to was a young lady.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And she had to go talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes, but
When
the
you were
only
asking those
people I
questions.
saw subsequent to this were like older women. One of whom
You
seemed
think she took to the young lady who was like, damn, we got HDMI cables? Like, no one's going to notice these. I was listening to a podcast recently. They told me you should steal from your job. I'm taking these cables and going home.
God damn it.
So let me tell you, first of all, like on the plus side, it was a very nice trip, like going up to coastal Maine, like ducking out on the entire heat wave was very nice. That was cool. Literally and figuratively. Things that began to go wrong. HDMI cable, obviously not optimal. Mina getting a massive ear infection.
No.
Also, so we picked her up straight from the groomer and went up to Maine. Next morning, she starts like flicking her head back and forth really violently again and again. And it's like, uh-oh, her ears are a little red. By Saturday night, the dog is in a stink cloud of like infection and is like deeply depressed and upset. And it turns out like there are no vets with openings like anywhere on the planet, apparently. Like you just can't, like you're like, I need to take my dog in, and it's like, great, we're booking 2 weeks out. Or you can go to the pet hospital with the 6-hour wait. So eventually we did like, the pet hospital situation was so bad, that like we ended up on the Monday we came back, like it turned a whole like search we ended up finding a place in like rural Maine. I guess a lot of it's rural, but you know what I mean? Like had to go pretty far in there to find someone, that did have an opening that could see her. And the thing that's frustrating is it was a 30-second trip. Like we knew it was like she needs
You're
eardrops.
just getting medicine.
She needs eardrops and antibiotics. That's all she needs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and it will take 5 seconds to diagnose her because you can smell this dog from 2 blocks away. And
I didn't realize ear infections in dogs were like
Stinky.
you can smell them.
They're stinky?
yeah, it's so it's a combination of like, so Mina, like poodles in general, like have ear in their ear canal. And it's kind of intentionally, what do you do with them? Because if you don't pluck their ears, they're prone to ear infections because stuff just gets stuck in there, and like causes an infection. But if you do pluck their ears, then you've broken the skin in the ear canal, and there's a good chance it'll get infected. So like, it's kind of
pick your poison.
Yeah, like you're kind of rolling the dice either way. But we had a plucking just like go particularly poorly. And so like the combination of like the, huge floppy ears and deep ear canal and the infection, like, yeah, it gets kind of stinky, in there. But yeah, it just turned into that. So that became a whole other derailing aspect. But Patrick, I'm sure you're wondering, how else could Rob have accidentally made this shatteringly expensive?
Oh my god. Yes, I want people to know that yes, we do some, planning for the podcast, but I don't know genuinely what Rob is about to say. Like, cause there's a world where like, oh, hey, they work this out. They're talking about it. Like Rob wants to fit this in. This is new to me. This is new to you. So please continue.
Flashback to about a week ago.
Uh-huh.
Me observing that the fridge door was getting kind of hard to shut, and we really need to be mindful about like making sure we slam it shut, because if you just sort of bang it shut with like your elbow or something, really good chance it'll like close 95% and then
one actually
slowly
like,
back
catch.
out slowly back out to like 80% shut. We at home, I'm unpacking, like, go out in the kitchen, starting to like put stuff away. I look over at the fridge, look back to like what I'm putting away. And then just like look back at the fridge and I'm like, have I had anything to eat out of that fridge yet? I'll bet I got a drink or something. I just don't remember it. I bet that just happened. I bet I just forgot the drink I got out of the fridge because I was driving. Yeah, I bet I just opened. I bet I opened it and I just found it. And I go in there, open it all the way, and it's like multiple beautiful colonies of new life being created. Like all over, food in the fridge. The water in the water carafe is like a balmy 75 degrees.
Right, because it was so fun.
It was a heat wave.
Did the heat get fixed?
Well, yeah, because the AC got fixed and did hold together through the week, through the weekend. But yeah, so in addition to the non-refundable hotel and everything,
you had to completely restock your fridge.
All of our food.
All of your food.
Wow.
And also, and this could just be me, but I feel like the fridge isn't getting as cold as it was before.
Oh my god!
Like,
oh my
I've got the shitty little knobs where it's like cold versus cold.
I don't trust those things.
I don't trust them either. But also, I find it very alarming that I'm like, hey, I would like this. I would like anything in this to be cold, right? Just anything in it to feel cold. And right now it's like pushed all the way to the absolute coldest setting. And I'm like, man, it is taking a long time to get anything cold in there. And like, fridge, are you good? Is it possible that having the compressor run throughout a 100-degree heat wave may have
like you might have pushed it over the edge because of the scenario? Huh.
Because it had to work overtime. Oh my god. Because the temperature
Yep.
Rob, I think you might have burned your fridge out.
Yep.
And you want to know what's worse? Just to twist the knife a little bit, is that you're not 100% sure this is the case. You will not be able to figure that out in the next 24 hours, 72 hours, even 96 hours.
Right. Because the best time
to buy a fridge is this fucking weekend.
Yep.
Everything is like $700 off because it's Memorial Day. It's the last big one before July 4th. I jokingly, I got an email from Home Depot that was like, hey, we saw you, one of those things we were tracking you, obviously. And one of those items you were looking at, hey, did you know it's Memorial Day? It's a lot cheaper. It was like one of the stoves we were looking at for the stream, and it was like $700 off. And so I pasted it as a joke, but now that is making me see that, my God, you're staring down the barrel, like finding out that this is broken 2 weeks from now, and like you're gonna miss the boat. It's not like you have a garage that you could just, I'll put it in there because it's gonna break eventually.
Remember the logic of like, I need a new stove like fast because like it's expensive to live without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's even triply so for the fridge.
like in retrospect, the stove could, like, if I'd known this was going to happen, I'd have been like, stove can wait. Like, we can, of course we can make this work for weeks. And now, so hoping that fridge is good. Hoping it's good.
Is it,
It's-
Rob?
It's
Rob,
not
I have a
good.
question.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Would it be a problem for you to give us a fridge temp check right now? For you to stand
No, I
up,
can, let me
walk into
go.
the other room.
I will go over and I will get the temperature probe out and
Thank
stick
you.
it in I feel like the water is probably the best.
The water is a really
Yeah.
good indicator.
All right, hold on 1 second.
All right. Hey team. Hey,
Yeah.
let's have a quick team meeting here.
Mm-hmm.
He's fucked, right?
Well, what he needs to do
He's-
realistically is he's
he's-
got to try and ride it out till July 4th.
I think so. You don't think?
Because
You don't think? We're recording this on Thursday. You don't think Friday morning is a rebuy Rob of a refrigerator stream so we can pick one out and then he can watch for the sale on Monday?
I mean, that's what he should do if he can be sure of that.
Yeah.
But it's like, the question is, does he want to take that leap? But he's not going to be able to get someone to come out and tell,
Right.
Probably not be able to get someone to come out in the next couple of days
Right.
to just come in and tell him,
I wonder if there's any
you know,
fridge
here's-
repair people.
hey,
who
this is
would-
going out. You've got a couple of months, but this thing's going to die.
Yeah, you
you
don't
should
wanna-
figure it out. Because if he's got a couple months and he can get by, and everything's not as cold, but it's not going to ruin your food. You can get to, and the July 4th sale
no.
start at the end of June.
Right.
Rob, well,
right.
Rob's having a my food is ruined face.
No.
He sits down.
What are we
I'm looking
looking
up how cold is a refrigerator supposed to be.
That sounds like more than whatever the number that you got if
Uh-oh.
you're worried about it.
Oh shit! Oh no!
What's the number, Rob? How cold is a refrigerator
Say the
supposed to
number,
be?
Rob.
Say the number, Rob.
So according to Google, pulling from the FDA guidelines, the ideal refrigerator temperature is 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below.
Okay, but is that real?
Sorry,
is that
40 or
what is
below?
I'm wondering if that's the ideal, but then there is a real
FDA
world.
tends to be aggressive. This is true.
Right,
Like,
that's what I'm
like FDA likes to overcook food and probably overchill.
right. Yeah, you should definitely not ever eat a rare steak. It will kill you.
Let me just go to
That's the thing.
Consumer Reports.
So
Let's
true.
see what
Rob.
Okay.
Whoa. Okay.
let's see what
Yeah, you should-
Emmanuel's wife has to say.
We should hold the number until
Did you tell us what?
he
Oh,
did
okay.
not.
I have not
Yeah, you
told you
haven't
what
to-
the number is.
No.
All right, yeah.
Oh
Don't tell
shit.
us.
Okay, Consumer Reports actually wants it to be 37 degrees.
Fahrenheit. We're talking about Fahrenheit here, right? Just to be sure.
Yes,
Okay.
Cado, yes. A refrigerator should not be 37 degrees Celsius.
Quietly, we switched to Celsius, and we just didn't tell anyone.
Your fridge is 39. You open your fridge
And
it
it's
feels
boiling.
Like
Yeah. You opened an oven.
That would feel like a warm mouth.
Yeah,
You put
yeah,
Your
a
fridge
warm
in
mouth.
Keep
Just
it at a
like-
good simmer.
my fridge is inside warm.
Okay, so
Okay, hold on. Can we? Okay, so team, sidebar. So based on Rob's reaction, it feels pretty far.
He's
off.
fucked.
Yeah, it feels pretty far off.
So we're thinking
He's
37 to
so
40 is
fucked.
what the two different recommendations are. Where do we think? Does everyone want to take a guess?
Yeah.
I'll go
44.
first. 40. No, it's probably in the 50s. I'm gonna say 51.
Ren, what do you got?
44.
44.
If it was above 50, I feel like Rob would be. We would know.
I feel like
we
we're getting
would know.
65.
We'll see.
65.
65.
60.
I think he would be on.
Oh wait, are
he
we
would
doing
be
prices
on Home
right?
DB.
Are we doing prices right rules, or are we doing just closest to it?
You went over.
okay, hold on. You know what?
This is what I mean. This is
Hang
what I
on.
mean. If
the
we're doing
Brita
prices,
is not a reliable. You know what? I put fresh water into the Brita routinely. It's probably just dealing with the hangover from the last time I put the water in.
It might be a little warmer.
Let me just real quick check the milk.
That makes sense.
You
That
should
does
sna-
make sense.
we should decide though. Is it
Yeah.
closest to, no matter if you're over or under, or
Yeah, I think it's closest to.
Okay.
I think it's closest.
Closest to, yeah.
then maybe I'll go down to 60, maybe.
Cado, if you think his refrigerator is 60, do you
I don't think it's
know
actually
how warm
60. I think 60 is closer than your guesses. Is what
I hope it's? I feel like 60 would be spoiling things.
60 would be spoiling things. Yeah, 60 is.
I mean, I hope it's 60 because that's funnier.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. Then I feel bad. Rob did just spend that's a lot of money to spend on appliances.
60 is actively room temperature. Like that is like I keep rooms at 60. If my refrigerator is the same temperature as a room that I am in, listen, I'm broken inside.
No, it's okay.
Okay, here we go.
Too cold for me,
Rob's
is
back.
what I should say.
Is Rob? Okay, Rob. Don't tell us the temperature. Are you feeling better or worse based on testing?
Better.
Okay.
Milk is,
all right.
The milk is more reassuring.
I'm gonna give everyone a chance to adjust your number. So I said 47. Cado, you had 61.
No, I'm gonna. He's feeling
I'm
better
just
about
going
the milk?
over the old numbers.
Yeah,
The
okay.
old numbers.
I said
61, and then
65
Ren,
originally, which is wrong.
You were
I
44.
said
right?
44 degrees. Now, Rob, can I tell you a little fact? Can I tell you a little fact kind of before you give us this number? Rob, what do you think? What temperature should milk be stored at? Do you think, Rob?
Is that different?
He's
from
going to reveal too much information.
Yeah,
by
Yeah,
doing
like if
that.
I tell you the number, it's
Yeah. Okay, so who wants? Cado, I assume you want to change your number.
Yeah. I think probably 55. And we're doing closest
55.
to. Doesn't matter if we're over or under, just closest by delta.
It's closest to
Okay.
yes. So 55, 47, and Ren, you want to stay at
44.
51.
No, 44.
44.
I've stood by
I was thinking
44.
61. Okay. All right. Hit us, Rob.
so the milk, which has not been, nobody's had any milk today. It's just sat in there all day, like not been taken out, not open until I took this temperature check right now. Is at 42 degrees.
So, Rob,
Yeah, okay.
the optimal temperature for milk to be kept at is between 34 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit, after which it spoils much faster.
But how fast do you drink milk? That's also the question.
Not that fast.
Not that fast. Okay. Because we go through because the kids, we go through, a carton of milk, 3 days. I assume that's not
What was the
you're doing.
water at?
49 degrees.
Okay.
By the way,
Yeah,
I
But
won.
that's not right. I think that is
Now, the
If-
water
if-
is absolutely warming up the fridge. That's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how, yep.
But it's like in the height of summer, that's more of a concern because you're bringing in the tap water is coming in warm.
right.
We aren't there yet. But the fact that this is already happening is concerning. The fact that the fridge doesn't have an air temperature sensor is the key thing here.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound like none of those numbers is great, is the thing.
No,
No.
none of them are good.
Well, so when you left, the thing I was saying was that what you need to figure out, because you're not gonna be able to figure out if you're not gonna be able to buy this for Memorial Day. You can't take advantage of that sale. So what you need to figure out is in the next week, can you get someone to come out and tell you, hey, can I co-send this for a month? Can I get to the end of June? Because the July 4th sales start a week and a half in advance of July 4th to maximize it. Can you make it to then to save pretty significantly? It's not these sales are usually $500 to $700 off appliances, and
Yeah.
fridges are
know-
very expensive.
Fridges are expensive.
You know any fridge technicians in your area?
You have a fridge guy,
Fridgeticians?
Rob?
Do you have a guy?
Well, I think this one's going to be the same math as the stove, where it's this is an old ass fridge that so there's one card we haven't played, which has we've had doubts about this thing in the past, which is that the little coils under the fridge get dust, kind of the little air return under the fridge gets kind of
Right.
dusty and just
Right.
gets less efficient. And so it can sort of get perked back up if you scour it with the vacuum cleaner and really clear them off. But yeah, these are not good. This is not a good sign.
No, this is suboptimal.
I'm a little bit that milk is not cold. That milk is not cold. So yeah. So that vacation cost us the price of the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Mina was gonna get sick no matter what. That was gonna happen. Honestly, like being up in Maine might have actually ended up making it less of a pain in the ass because, like, I think that situation is even worse in the greater Boston area. But the fridge, all the food,
Mm-hmm.
and the cost of the fridge, and trust me, that fridge was full. Like that was like, it wasn't like, because it was an impromptu vacation. It's not like we've been like, not getting groceries because we were leaving for a few days. So, okay. All right. Well then.
So,
Yikes, like they say Nikes, huh?
So we're doing a fridge stream tomorrow, huh?
yeah, that's what I was
So I'm excited
about
for
to
How
tomorrow.
say.
quickly can
I gotta
Rob
do-
get a
So,
Memorial Day sale fridge?
I mean, fast. I mean, well,
Remember,
fridges-
here, my options are real limited because of the weird bay size. So, in some ways, it's simpler. In some ways, it's shittier.
Well, and then that, again, it's the COVID manufacturing crisis, then is like regionally,
Mhm.
what are
Yeah.
you dealing with in terms of,
Almost certainly, I'm getting another LG thing, right? Because like they have maintained chip supply.
We'll be best friends.
Yeah, and then all my things can talk to each other. Although I think my induction stove, when I was trying to hook it up to the wireless,
Don't
somehow knocked my router offline.
don't fucking do it.
Don't hook it up.
Don't hook it up.
no, he wants his cooking spyware.
Don't let
Well, my
him
cooking
in.
spyware,
God.
but it did take my router offline when I was trying to hook it up.
Yeah.
So I might not do that again.
It's
'cause,
really probably not useful.
It's
And
well,
only
yeah, but
allows
the thing is,
an
you know what I
entry point
underestimated?
into your land that
I
is
underestimated-
unnecessary.
I underestimated how annoying that touchscreen might be, though. Like Patrick said, like,
Vindicated.
watch out for that touchscreen. And I was like, it'll be fine. Most of the controls are knobs anyway. And I swear to God, every time I have to set a timer for 10 minutes using that touchscreen or adjust the oven temperature off its default is just fucking infuriating because it's like tap, 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 not registering anything. Hold down. You want to cook this thing for 12 hours? No!
Well, because my worry about all this, I was like, you have so many different like liquid, just different moistures like around like a cooking space that are going to like interfere with your finger's ability to touch that stinks.
So that hasn't come up,
Okay.
but it is much more just the fact that like those little touch screens on things like appliances are really kind of shaky about like detecting when they're being touched and like how many times they've been touched. So
Probably
it's
for
like,
good reason, but then when you need to use them, that good reason interferes with your ability to use them.
This is hell to me. I'm so sorry, Rob.
Look, there's a what'd you call it? Was a bay fridge?
me?
Yeah.
So the
What's what style of fridge that you?
Oh, well, I've got a side by side a bay fridge. No, sorry. So
No,
I
the
said-
bay on the fridge is a
the
non-standard
fridge bay in
size.
my kitchen is really small, so that's
Oh,
the
okay.
problem.
The
It's like
size.
it's kind of weirdly, it's like not as wide. It's wider than the smallest size, but it's like not standard wide, and it's also like shorter than fridges are now. And
okay,
so
but you're a handy guy. As you said
I have
before.
so since I said that
Handy
I
guys.
I have been advised that I am not.
Oh, who told you that?
MK very emphatically was like, well, she did point out that my initial plan was like, we could sort this right out. She was like, what about the cabinets that are hanging from the ceiling? Like, yeah, you can pull out the countertop part, but like there's still cabinets there. The fridge isn't like a Tetris piece. And I was like, oh, that's so true. That's so true. It is not an L-shaped fridge, and until science like builds one, my initial plan for like we can just like fix this up lickety split isn't gonna work. So, yeah, we will. I'm gonna have to figure out. Well, maybe the fridge is still good, or if not good, at least it enforces some discipline about like not storing food in it. That's not
That's nothing.
that doesn't actually
Rob, that's nothing.
wait.
What is that? What is that?
We used to have a fridge where you
It's
could store food, but ever since it stopped being a place where you can safely store food, life's gotten so much simpler.
We haven't stored food. Rob's gonna be like going back to curing meats in a week. Fucking
Can't do that.
14
Well, actually, the broken fridge would be the perfect temperature for. Let's not say broken. Let's say underperforming, but it's the perfect temperature for meat curing.
Oh, love that corpo speak.
I was say feels I thought we ended the shipbreaker discussion.
The labor corner.
Okay,
Oh,
well, some mistakes have been made. And I'm not like now that I think about it, I wonder how cold things would be if you just had like a good cooler and like you packed it with ice. Would that be doing a better job than my fridge is right now?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, kind of wonder. Well, fucked that up.
I won't say it like that. Now it's sad. Rob,
Hey, I could get. I was gonna say I could get, like cool new fridge out of this deal, but like,
Well, that's the problem. You do need a cool new fridge.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want a warm new fridge.
Rob's,
but also it's
one
like-
criteria makes pellet ice.
it's also probably not good if your bank is like, hey, you monitoring your credit usage?
We put a hold on this charge because there's several multi-$1,000 transactions going through at an increased rate.
Like, what happened this month, man?
Are you cool?
You
The
good?
chase is a push
You
notification
all
that
right?
just says, "Are you cool?"
Do you need to? Did you like get divorced? Are you like moving in your own place now? Like,
I mean,
just let
Rob's
us know,
midlife
or-
crisis would be purchasing a bunch of highfalutin appliances that
Appliances,
conveniently break all at the same time. So he can take advantage of Best Buy's currently ongoing 10% off if you buy 4 appliances at one steal.
Sorry, they have a what deal? That's an insane deal.
Wait, what is that deal?
That's
4 for 1?
who needs
It's 10% off if you buy 4 appliances at the same
Oh.
time. Which, look, if you're spending 10 grand,
10%.
I am, I was going to
Pretty
say I
good.
don't know who does that stuff, but this is how my mother like operated. Was like she would occasionally just get these like manias to her where she's like, this is why she remodeled our kitchen like 3 times when I was growing up. Once would have been enough, but it was always like we could do that
nice
again.
sale at the Best Buy.
We get new appliances, and I was like, but money? And they're like, you don't understand money. And I was like, you're right, I really don't. And my parents would be like, with this second mortgage, anything is possible. And I'd be like, isn't that like a loan against your home? But like, again, because you don't own your home? And it's like, shh, child, you don't understand money. I understood more than in retrospect, I was right about a few things, but now
As much as I loved the popcorn mode on the new microwave.
Yeah. But I will also admit, like, suddenly I understand how just very quickly it's like, well, gotta finance an entire new kitchen because the cascade is a rolling. Anyway, back to video games. Speaking of my shit getting wrecked, I will just say Warhammer 40k, Chaos Gate, Daemonhunters. Hey, that thing is escalating rapidly. Like, really good tactics game. Like, continue to be like, hell yes, this thing rules. Also, didn't expect it to be an issue quite so soon that all my Marines would be fucked up from battles, and I couldn't, like, I am now having to field entire squads of guys who are like a little banged up and don't have many hit points. And because they're a little banged up and don't have many hit points, I have a really great deployment to surgical reconstruction pipeline going for my Marines, where like fight a battle, send a guy off to have his arms grafted back on for the next. And
how's that going for them?
Well,
Are they better arms?
No, none of them. Oh, so I haven't gotten any like positive buffs from augmentations. I haven't really had much happen there at all. But I did have a thing where I was like, I thought the rule was if a guy goes down twice in a mission, he was just dead.
Yeah.
Well, in a really hard mission, tons of people got knocked out, and one guy got knocked twice, but he got teleported out when we won the mission. I was like, okay, I guess this game was kind of bluffing or something. And then immediately after, a story event happened where it was like, man, we should just like harvest this guy's gene seed. Sorry, in 40K, like the Marines, like all their genetic materials like harvested and like used to grow the next generation of Marines. So we should just like basically turn this guy into future Marines, rather than like try to keep him alive. But you have a choice about it. And there was like, yeah, we should just let him go. We should harvest the gene seed, but I didn't have a facility for doing that. So like, because I had invested in that infrastructure, because I was like, I'm not going to lose troops. I didn't have the like the troop grinder set up for turning them back into Marine sausage. And then there was a third one. It's like, well, we could do some radical procedures. And I was like, fuck yeah, give him those radical procedures. He was a good machine gunner. Every single soldier, I do not know what is implied. Every single soldier that was on the mission with him received permanent, significant, deep, like, subtractions from their stats. Like, the implication is to save this one guy, every single member of his fire team is just like dealing with lifelong complications now. And they've
removed like 3 of the 6 kidneys that all of the Marines have. They're
yes.
like, fuck, we gotta check out 3 of those kidneys, bud. Sorry, this guy needs 12 now. Not many people know that, but when you get hurt really bad, you start needing more kidneys.
And like, there's now parts of the space where like, because I just haven't had the wherewithal to get my ship over there and like intervene in some of these sectors routinely, there's now places where like the missions I have to go on are so fucking hard that it's just like, it's self-perpetuating, where it's like, I cannot take this banged up crew of like semi-rookies into this fight because they will all die. So we will go for the low-hanging fruit. But in the meantime, that planet just gets like more and more scary and like overrun with chaos. So this campaign might be in a failure spiral. It's right on that edge. I haven't failed that much yet, but like the victories, like the cost I'm now paying to like keep the win streak alive is skyrocketing. And now it is starting to enter a place where like every battle is leaving me weaker, really, more than stronger. Like even with guys leveling up.
This came up in when I initially was trying to figure out, should I play this game? This seems like people were recommending it to me. But then I read like the PC Gamer article or was IGN, in which like the writer said, well, it took me like 2 15-hour runs.
Hang on, I know all those bitches. They don't know shit.
Wow!
Says the guy who's admitting he's in a death spiral.
Oh my God.
And left his fridge open all fucking weekend.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. Like,
God damn.
Look, you can't trust John Balding. You certainly can't trust Len.
You
Hafer
are
or
leaving
Rowan
a
Kaiser.
fridge open.
You need to leave a fridge open in your heart, Rob, for
Cado.
other critics' opinions. Anyway, this was my worry, is like that if I played it on normal, like I didn't want to play a game where I needed to understand the optimization that I needed to do at the front by playing 20 hours of it and then starting from scratch. And it seems a little bit like that's what you're trying to figure out. It's like, are you done with this game and you've had your run? Or
no, I would joyously start over.
Right. But like, would you take the lessons of this, go back and realize, if I just done these, if I spec'd out these soldiers in this way sooner, made the XY decisions, like you can actually end up in a place where you're not in this spiral. Which seems like is probably what everything I've read about the game is like, I don't think you're about to take a turn that suddenly makes things easier.
No. I will say, like, I just need to get some clean dubs. I think if I get some clean dubs, then things will start going more in my direction.
Now, Rob, I am curious. What would you say that your campaign has been going significantly worse than our on-stream campaign, or we just have not hit that point?
We just not hit the turns.
Got it.
Got it.
There
are like our on-stream campaign is started, like we're starting to get into the real part of the game where like the training wheels are kind of off. But the thing that we have not seen yet, but I've now crossed over in my solo campaign, there is, so this plague we're fighting, you go through the end of the first act, and now there's 4 different plagues you're fighting.
Hey,
like fully
Rob.
pandemic, where it's like there's new, and each variant has like a different aspect. So like, when this form of infestation is happening, these are the negative consequences. You'll see these enemies, these things will happen to your Marines. When this thing is present on a planet, you'll see something else. Sometimes you'll see both because they're both there. And so you are seeing like,
yeah, King.
There's more stuff being thrown at you that hits very differently, and also some of the like mission types you're dealing with, and like, for instance, the thing that really like routinely gets me is there's these missions where you got to like race through the level and just kill like some sort of nexus of infection, right? And every turn you're on the map, remember, like the warp energies continue building, and like that basically that timer fills up, and like bad shit happens for you. Either a direct debuff for your Marines, or a buff for the enemies, or just more enemies. And so you have to, like, if the planet is infested enough, that charge fills really, really quickly. And so now you just have to like book it to try to get to the end of this level and like get to this objective. But now you are fully playing in the like, your guys are fully like hanging in the air at the end of every turn because you're trying to like blaze through these fights. And here's the weird thing. It's all fucking cool. Like I'm saying, like, this is really tough. It's like, I'm starting to like really encounter some real challenge here. The thing I want to stress is all of it is awesome. Like, as bad as this is, it feels incredible because it's like, okay, so these 2 guys now need to take on 2 squads of enemies who are coming from the back because they've been chasing us since they aggroed. These other 2 guys need to continue like forging forward and just trying to like carve a bloody path to the objective. And somehow we need to recoalesce in the middle of all this. And I need to leverage all the abilities and the ways we interact with enemies to like regather my forces. And there's so many tools for doing that like each of these fights, each of these missions, like as ugly as the win can feel, you're also like, this was the most Space Marine shit that could have happened, right? Where it's like, look at this crew of badasses. Like the Emperor protects, motherfucker. That's how it feels. But also like, I have maybe like the amount of care I have to take with each turn is just steadily increasing. Like, there are no more milk runs right now, which can be a little intense. Sometimes you need the milk run.
Now, Rob, can I ask you a question that might be tough to hear? Do you think that because of the amount of warp energies that you're kind of facing and the amount of servants of chaos who are kind of throwing themselves at you, do you think that it, not to question the God Emperor, do you think it might not have been the best decision to interact with such grim powers?
I mean, I basically,
not to question the God Emperor, of course.
I mean, it may have. We maybe should have kept further away from the warp and its foul magics than we did. Yeah.
And Rob, I just want to let you know that there is now an Inquisitor being dispatched to your location.
Oh my god, they're all hot. Well, actually, you know what? That's not entirely true. Some of them are like shitty, toxic little like dudes. Yeah, like the first Inquisitor appears in the early Gaunt's Ghost novels. Like, fuck that guy. But like the hot
Little
Inquisitor
worm
that appears later that has like a direct connection to the Eldar, you know, she's cool. She's doing the Emperor's work. But that other Inquisitor is evil, you know? Like, so
He sucked.
I think it's a good role. If the Inquisitor is sufficiently hot, probably a good Inquisitor.
That's so true, Rob.
Yeah.
That's so true of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, look, I don't want to be the one to, like, it's awkward to be like, like, beautiful people are just better morally, and like, it's just like, that's just how it is in 40K. Like, how do you recognize the taint of chaos?
Not hot, not cool.
Yeah, just not a cutie, but like a loyal servant of the Emperor. Like, they got it going on.
Hell.
So Cado,
Yo.
you are very high on one game and very low on another, and I just wanted to check in on what Cado's been playing lately.
An old
Yeah.
high-low.
What do we want first? Bad news or good news, I guess?
Well, okay, like Patrick's was casting doubt on your judgment because you were like, I think Multiversus sucks,
yeah.
and Patrick was
Yes.
like, you are the only one saying that.
I have not done a comprehensive data analysis of the multiverse reactions, but
Patrick was fully in the tank for Multiversus.
look, I love a good Scooby meme turned into a video game character. No, I generally seen that people were, unlike the, what was it, the SpongeBob? What was the other
Nickelodeon.
most
It was
recent one?
Nickelodeon based. Yeah, I forget what the
Nickelodeon,
fuck the
where
name was of that one.
We're like, maybe that one will be good, and it wasn't.
Mhm.
And then this one was like, I think people went in, maybe with just lowered expectations and came out of it going like, okay, maybe this isn't total dog shit, because that's more or less how Cado was setting expectations ahead
Now,
of the podcast.
Yeah, like,
Cado, are you playing with another establish what this game is and what separates it. Sorry.
Multiversus is WB, I believe. Right? Yeah, that's who owns all these IP. The WB's crack at a platform fighter, aka their version of Smash Brothers. They've got, people, all your favorite WB favorites like Bugs Bunny and Adventure Time and Arya Stark from Game of Thrones.
What?
Hell yeah. No, that's stupid as fuck. I love it. I'm in.
Yeah, definitely looked at the all the characters and was like, who the fuck is that? And like moused over to be like, oh, this weird young woman is Arya Stark. Okay. You've got some DC characters in there as well, of course. And basically the main mode is a 2v2 game, which is already strange. There is a 1v1 mode, which is generally how I've played these games in the past, but I tried all the modes out, and in general it feels like it might have been a better idea to be maybe linked up with someone to play this game, but in general I was just jumping into the hopper with random people. And I am a longtime Smash fan. Like, I've played basically all of the games, and I've gotten used to that cadence, and this feels like slogging through molasses in comparison, but only in parts of it. Basically, all of the like input for moves feels like there's like a million seconds on either end of like the wind-up animation, the actual hit going through, and then recovery frames, like all feel like it takes forever for anything to come out. And then there's also an input buffer, which is a thing that fighting games have, where like as a move is finishing, you can input the next move you want to do. But it feels like at times that input buffer, because the moves are so slow to come out, that input buffer has caught me in surprise. Like, I must have accidentally hit an input that I forgot by the time it actually finishes, because I moved directly into another move that I didn't mean to do, because everything is just like, it's not tuned to what it wants, what it feels like it should be tuned to. And the reason is because the movement still feels like Smash Brothers. Like, the speed that you can like cross terrain still feels like Smash Brothers. But then everything else is slower. It just like feels wrong. It feels
it's like movement is sort of snappy.
Yeah, it's like pretty
the
quick.
Moves do not.
And then the moves come out. The moves take forever to come out, and the input buffer, like if you're not careful with your inputs, then suddenly you're doing moves that you're like, I didn't really mean to do that. I thought it took so long for that other move to come out. I could put something else in afterwards, right? It's like I'm hitting inputs faster than they can come out in a way that doesn't feel like, you know, fighting games do this all the time, where it's like you have to know how long a move takes to come out before you can hit the next one, or else that move is just not gonna happen, right? Like you hit the input too fast, it doesn't work. And this one like throws a buffer in there that is so long that accidental inputs feel like they're actually coming through. And like I think it's possible that in a world where you don't play these games a lot and you're not used to a certain speed already, you could become accustomed to this kind of slower input speed. But initially, like I played like 2 hours just to like really be like, can I get my mind around this? And it never really quite felt very good.
What about just in terms of like the cleverness of creating the character like movesets and such, and like the theming around the characters? Like, do they feel like fun and goofy in a way that's authentic? Like setting aside the pace of the game,
yeah.
Do they pull it off? Where like, this is kind of a funny, like, you know, this is how bugs would fight.
Yeah, I think for the most part, that part of it, the translation of like the character into a fighting game feels all right. Like, I mean, I have less of a specific idea of these characters in general. Just, I mean, like,
Bugs Bunny means less to you than Kirby.
Right. Like, it just kind of does. And, like, I know Bugs Bunny. Like, yes, I watched Looney Tunes as a kid. Like, I understand that. And, like, the translation there is fine. But, like, it, like, doesn't, none of it felt, and part of this might just have to do also with the art treatment. I think the art treatment is a little weird, where I'm not sure where they're pulling, like, some of these designs from, where, like, the Bugs Bunny looks kind of weird. I'm sure if I kept up with Bugs, it's maybe like his current design, or like same with Wonder Woman, and Arya Stark is obviously the weirdest one because Arya Stark was played by a real person, and so it's like a weird cartoon version, and none of them feel like, you know, in Smash Brothers, everyone exists in this, like, they're all polygons, but because the designs are so different from their different, like, from what their different games are, they still feel kind of distinct and, like, true to what their originals are, even if their originals were sprites. Something about the character and cartooning design of this has kind of flattened them all out in a way where, like, they don't feel particularly unique, and, like, I don't know, the Batman doesn't, like, look like what I expect the Batman to look like. It, like, they didn't even, like, attempt, like, take a Bruce Timm's and turn it 3D.
I kind of see what you mean. Like,
right? Like, it looks like they tried to make them mostly all fit within the same universe.
This is going to be the most dated as hell reference, but you remember the game Toonstruck? Patrick might remember it.
No?
So it was an attempt to do an animation FMV game starring like Doc Brown. Sorry, I forget the actor's actual name. Oh, Ben
Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
It's on Steam.
Doc Brown.
Yeah, I just found it.
Oh my god!
But the difficulty is like everyone's like, so many people have grown up seeing these characters a lot, like just like to like either watching the cartoons or just being aware of like that they sort of exist in the cultural space,
right?
But like it's actually really hard to evoke the style of the places they actually inhabit, and this, like, it reminds me of Toonstruck, because Toonstruck is like was trying so hard to evoke things like old Looney Tunes cartoons and such. And, you know, the problem was, and I would say like stylistically, it probably looks even more interesting than Multiversus is, but like it still feels like kind of a filed off, in some ways, like generic copy or like imitation of the original.
Right.
Because so much of the designs is informed, but you referenced like Bruce Timm there, right? Like that is an entire show where every single thing in it has an aesthetic and an approach to like line and angle and shape that like informs everything. And looking at the footage from like Multiversus.
Well, it's like look at this list, and it's like the ones that are already cartoony, like Adventure Time and Steven Universe characters. They look like they can't change the cartooning choices they made. But then you look at like Arya Stark, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and like for some reason they've made them in completely, like even Shaggy is kind of off. It's like it's weird and it doesn't feel particularly like, I don't know. There's something about the Nintendo like method of like taking a lot of care over the IP that they've put into that and like having it feel like a very good treatment of the character. And like none of the ones that I've played, which also I didn't get to play all of them because a bunch of them are locked. You have to unlock them, and like that's like par for the course for fighting games sometimes. But like it was still like, oh, I have to play how much to download Arya Stark? It's like a lot. I feel like it was like, I have to go back and remember how many coins I even made over the like 2 hours that I played it, but it was like 2,000 coins to pick her up or some shit, and it was like I didn't have enough after those 2 hours to unlock a single character.
Well, the faceless men don't come cheap. Like,
yeah,
that's true.
I think one of the things that also like hit me particularly about like the way that the game plays is just that it has fewer inputs than Smash. Like the whole thing with Smash is like the tilt and speed of your analog stick will throw out different moves. So it just felt like there was like a smaller moveset overall. I felt like you could do less and you were kind of repeating the same things over and over much more often. But the big thing about this one is that they have kind of designed it around 2v2 games, where some characters have support moves, like this one, the Rain Dog, which in that picture, it's the bottom left thing in that picture that I posted in our chat. That's an original character that they made for this game, not from any previous IP.
I was walking around, I was like, who the fuck is Rain Dog?
Who the fuck is Rain Dog? Nobody knows. Not from anything, just for this game. The Rain Dog has like a very obvious kind of support power where it tethers to another player, and at any moment you can pull that player towards you. So like if somebody goes off the side of the screen, which is the way you die in these games, if you fall off the platform and fall to your death, or hit the side of the screen or the top of the screen, you die. Rain Dog can pull you back in, which sounds like a great thing, and maybe if you're on voice comms with someone, you can coordinate around that. But just hopping into like multiplayer and like trying some things out, there was a lot of, and this just happens in any multiplayer game of like two people without an easy means to communicate, especially in a game that's supposed to be faster. There's less interesting coordination happening. And they don't set up an easy way for you to combo into things without kind of, having that sort of like voice communication often. But like even just like I couldn't even get to the like mode of like being like, okay, and now how do I play with my other my like teammate better? Because like the whole time I was struggling with making the character do what I want it to do consistently, without it feeling like I'm throwing moves that shouldn't be happening. It just I don't know. Part of me does wonder how much of it is the muscle memory of Smash just sticking hard. But it's like not that the controls are any different. It's just that the controls are slower and have a lot more input lag and frame buffering, a lot more frames on the beginning and outset of
I mean,
move.
the sensitivity of people who play Smash to the feel of a Smash game, like it's something that Nintendo also struggled mightily with, right?
It's astounding. It is astounding.
I mean, and like, there's still pros that don't like the way Ultimate ended up because of certain movement tech that couldn't be done. But like, I'm not to that point. Like, I could never wave dash. I was never a melee purist. I really enjoyed Ultimate, and still, right, like. It felt bad to control.
Now, setting that aside, now you were also really high on something.
Yeah. Wait, which one did we say I was high on again? Oh, right, Roller Champions.
Yeah.
Well, because I was also high on Destiny, which it's Destiny.
We know.
I lied. Shut the fuck up. It's a good new. There's new stuff in Destiny.
See previous episodes of Waypoint Radio. You can make a playlist, Cado.
Fuck. Anyways, I had a lot of fun with Roller Champions, this Ubisoft game. Yeah, Ubisoft. I remember now actually because I hadn't logged into Uplay in so many years that I had to reset my two-factor because it was from a phone that I didn't own anymore. It is a sports game where you're on rollerblades. It's two teams of three. You're in a ovular rink, and there's one hoop. And essentially, what you have to do is you have to make a full lap of the rink while in possession of the ball until you can score. If you do one lap, you get 1 point. You do 2 laps, you get 3 points. You do 3 laps, you can score for 5 points, which actually automatically wins you the game. It's first to 5 points, which seems low for this sort of like. Basketball goes to like a bajillion points or whatever.
Indeed.
But the point is
not if you're not during these NBA playoffs. But yeah. Sometimes they do.
Yeah. The point though is that making a loop is actually really difficult because what you're allowed to do is tackle other people and knock the ball out of their hands, just throw them to the ground basically. And it was like surprisingly fun to like hop into these games even as a solo player because it's teams of 3, but like there's a lot of really great movement tech in this where like you're allowed to kind of drift behind the people who have the ball, which allows you to catch up to them. So if you're the ball holder, you have an incentive to let your teammates kind of circle around you and get in front of you so you can pass forward. Or have them kind of hang back and play like defense by knocking people out from behind you. But there are ways to like do sick dodges to get around people and like get back. You lose a little bit of momentum, but then you can speed back up by, have you ever seen like people skate over like a large hump where they like pump their legs to kind of give them more momentum on the downslope? That is like the main momentum, like mechanic in this is like the way the rings are made. There's like lots of slopes that you can kind of like pump yourself down to like get lots of momentum. So it feels really cool and good to like start gaining speed and trying to catch up to the person who has the ball and set up plays with your other players where like there's a way to do like in most like sports games, you can do a pass that's magnetized, essentially like aimed towards one of your people, but in a pinch, you can also just fucking lob the thing. And there's that sort of, I think Rocket League does this, where there's like a line that shows you where it's going to land, like on the ground, so you don't have to like look up to track it. But it makes you can do really fun like plays by bouncing the ball out of the way and like still like catching up with it by gaining more momentum because you slow down when you have the ball. It's neat. It's free to play. And it's particularly buggy right now at the like on the menus and shit. But once you're
Wasn't this game announced like a long time ago?
Yeah, like forever ago. And I think it was actually there was a moment at some point where it was open beta or something.
It was a beta, and then it just kind of disappeared
for like ever. Like I didn't get into the beta, but I was like, that seemed interesting. And like somebody, I'm in a Discord with that like. Was following it because they really enjoyed the time in the beta and like mentioned like, oh, that shit's out today, and it was like, oh, it's free to play, fuck it, like let's go try it out. So I went in and like played a surprising amount of time in it, just like, yeah, this feels really cool to like speed along and like make pass plays with and like block for my ball carrier, and you can like, you've got a super jump where you can like jump through the hoop. I once jumped through a hoop during one of my games as someone was trying to shoot it and came out through the other end of the hoop and basically goaltended the thing, which is allowed, but it was very fun to like figure out different ways to play defense and offense in this game, where at first it feels like someone might run away with it if they're far enough ahead, but there's enough of like kind of catch up mechanics where like being with the ball is never 100% safe. Like, even if you're like, even if you've made a large gap, there's always some way to kind of either you circle back around, like you don't have to keep going in the same direction, right? Like you can go back around and like block from the other counterclockwise direction if you wanted to, and like all those sorts of strategies are like, they're fun and interesting to do, and it's free, which is a huge thing to me. It's just like, oh, I can just download this.
What's weird is that there's not more rollerball video games.
Yeah, right. Like,
I'm looking
it's
at this
wild.
like, it seems like there'd be more of this,
right? What was that? Was it dodgeball? There was like, what was that sports thing that?
Oh, the EA sports game that it was called
Knockout City.
Knockout City.
That game was very good.
Yeah. That's
came out
kind
in
of
June of
up? Are they
2021.
still supporting
It is EA basically didn't want to be involved with it anymore, so they basically just gave the IP to the developer and said,
Yeah.
have fun.
have fun.
By
Season
the way.
5 is currently what they are in.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really enjoyed my time with that game.
But yeah, Roller City, very very fun game. The character creator is very funny because they've tied hair to the helmets that you're wearing. So everyone starts with it's basically like one of those like wrestling helmets, that kind of, but you can kind of see the person's head under those, and everyone's bald. Everyone has to be bald at the beginning. You unlock hairstyles through like a battle pass, or you can buy them from a store. This is how they monetize it.
This is
through
the
those
future
cosmetics.
corporations want. We should probably wrap it up, but I do have some food for thought that I want you all to reflect on, because I was pulling up the end of Rollerball. In case I watched the end of Rollerball on YouTube because it's fucking rad. Anyway, top comment on this video of the end of Rollerball. The one thing the corporate establishment overlooked in their efforts to have the game eliminate Jonathan. The more difficult you make the game, the more likely the most talented individual will win. And that's exactly what happened. The triumph of the individual spirit.
That's so true.
Oh my god.
That's so true.
I think this person really sums up, like, anytime you create structural factors or obstacles, you're just making it that much more likely that the right people will triumph.
Yeah, it makes people better. That's really true.
We're all about steel.
So the
sharpening
meritocracy is good.
Absolutely. And and it's actually more meritocratic the more you tilt it.
Right.
Yeah, the more you kind of kick people in the ribs, the better they are, is kind of a thing that I've been saying for a while. And people have been like, no, Ren, you can't say that you want to kick people in the ribs to make them stronger. But like when those bones heal back better,
Build back better.
Build bones
Jesus
back
Christ.
better after I kick you in the ribs. Yes.
Look, this is what Hemingway told us. And, if there was ever a resilient guy, it's Ernest Hemingway.
Really good at handling external factors in his life. Ernest Hemingway.
All right. So, anything else we want to check in on real quick before we wrap it?
One small thing. I guess Kotaku was reported that in some sort of all hands at Microsoft, Phil Spencer was asked about the Raven unionization effort, and he explicitly said like they would recognize the union if it happened. When companies are acquired, it is not necessarily that a union has to be recognized. I don't know how. I don't know if that like specifically legally like how companies get acquired is.
Well,
like,
you certainly don't have to eat their
ways.
contract. Is I think because successorship was such a thing in ours.
Correct. So like, yeah, this is something that regularly comes up in union contract negotiations is if the company was sold, which happens frequently in all sorts of different industries, especially media, what happens to the contract that was negotiated? Does the company do we have to do a new one with the new company, which is, you could be starting off on weaker footing, or do they have to continue the contract as already agreed by the company that agreed to it, the company getting, sold. And so, that doesn't settle all of the matters of like what would happen with Raven's QA unionization effort. But I mean, it's not a bad thing that information is getting out there and is now on the record as a result of Kotaku reporting it. So, again, just one little... And I really hate the good guy Phil Spencer culture sort of thing. Like, stop. But, it is good that he said that.
So you don't think Based Phil is like personally invested in like making sure we get that new Hexen from a happy union shop?
He says something, what was the thing? He said something along the lines of like emulation should be legal, or it was something like that recently. It was like, well, yeah, but like, I don't expect you're going to make your company recognize that. Well, so that's kind of an empty gesture. It's nice that you can say things that you can't pull off.
Were the words specifically emulation?
I can't remember, but it was something
because if it was, technically the emulation part isn't the part that gets you in trouble.
Yeah, I know. I'm misremembering the quote, but it was sort of something that was like a long shot. Well, it's cool that an executive would say that.
Sure.
But like, I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway.
All right. Well, that will do it for this week. We're heading into a holiday weekend. We will not be podcasting we will not be recording on Monday because it's a holiday, so there will be no new podcast on Tuesday. But we will be back with regularly scheduled podcasts from Friday, and also we are going to have I've already lost track. Is it next week? We've got the Heat Manhunting episode dropping.
Heat Manhunting. It can be. We did technically have a thing this week, so we could skip a week as per our normal cadence.
I think the people deserve their bounty, especially because we hope to be in honor of going manhunting and Heat. We hope to be playing the second most Michael Mann-ass video game series ever made, which is Payday. Michael Mann probably would have drawn the line at clown masks, but
Wait, what is the number one most?
Oh, Kane Lynch.
Kane and Lynch. Oh,
didn't they just fucking use the? No, I guess they were hockey masks, weren't they?
What, in the opening heist?
Yeah,
they used them in the opening heist, but like, the last one they're just wearing nice suits, which is how you should go heisting.
That is how you should go heisting.
Just wear nice suits.
Dress for the job you want.
Yeah,
which is heisting.
Yeah.
God.
No, but yeah, Kane Lynch 1 especially is just like one level after another of like, and man, remember this scene in this Michael Mann movie? And that's how the game is sort of stitched together. The second one's doing some other things. But yeah, I celebrate both those games, despite their sordid history in the lore of games reviews and Giant Bomb. Always have a soft spot for their pastiche of Michael Mann.
There's a really good video essay about them called Ugly Games by Jacob Geller that I would heartily recommend. It is one of my favorite video essays. It's very, very good.
So go check that out and check out what we've been up to on waypoint.vice.com. As we referred to, Patrick and I we did a little like letter series on the Raven unionization. Patrick also wrote up a thing about Ren posting in our group chat, much like Rob's fridge, manhunting is heating up. That's true. So here's a really frustrating thing though. So if you're like, man, I should watch Heat to get ready for this new episode of Man, like, I'm not saying don't listen to our episode. I am just saying they finally announced that the 4K edition of Heat is coming out this summer. Do with that what you will.
Isn't it playing in theaters too? No, that's the thing. There's an upcoming thing showing in theaters.
There is a showing in New York like this weekend, I think, and I think it was going last weekend too, of a bunch of Michael Mann movies. I just couldn't make the time. Yes.
Wait, let me go.
Yeah, they're showing like The Insider, Heat, Miami Vice,
New York,
Collateral.
Rob cancels his trip to New York for a Waypoint stream and just secretly makes his way down for a bunch of Michael Mann movies.
Listen, you leave Rob alone.
Point is, the 4K is coming. On the other hand, the manhunting episode on Heat out right now. Also on waypoint.vice.com. Yeah.
Not out right now.
The Tribeca Film Festival does have a showing of Heat Friday, June 17th.
I will be not there.
Oh.
I'm not arriving till the day later. I know. But I'm not going to a movie theater in New York City right now. Like, I'm just the same reason, like the same motive things that causes us to cancel that trip. Like, it's not different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not there. Anyway, point is, also on waypoint.vice.com, Patrick had a really good interview with Gareth Damian Martin on Citizen Sleeper and sort of the trick it has to play of feeling like a desperate, you're always up against it. You can feel capitalism's hand closing around your throat, but also not being a fucking miserable choose your own adventure. Die it again.
Failure's not fun. Like making, like, I think the quote was like, like making failure part of the story.
It's so weird. Like if you think about choose your own adventure novels, it was like everything fails. Everything leads to a disaster. And that was their character. They're the most dire fucking stories. And then in the RPG space, the mindset is increasingly like always keep it going, right? Like play it as it lays, type thing. So yeah, it's a great interview. Highly recommend checking it out. Also, we need to figure out, I watched all of Severance in a weekend. I got into it. We might end up discussing that in the next couple weeks. I hope we do.
Do you want me to watch all of Severance this weekend?
No, because you got to get that review done. But watch a fair bit of Severance. Watch a fair bit of Severance.
It's a good show.
Because I think we're going to do it the week after. I'm stuck waiting for my wife to get back from a week-long trip. I will finish the last 2 episodes, and then, so not next week, but the week after. Lots of people have said we should do a Severance pod.
But also, like, we got this weird trio. Like, Hardspace is all about, like, man, capitalism just wants your labor, just wants your body to be another piece in the machine. Citizen Sleeper, all about, like, man, like, what's the most maximally alienated thing you can be? Like, just a brain inside a body that's like designed to do work.
Rob, I just want to vibe on numbers, okay? Like, let me vibe on the scary numbers.
Why don't we?
How did we skip Squid Games? How did this podcast skip Squid Games, by the way? Because
it got really popular.
Yeah.
Kind of out of nowhere. And then we said we should probably do that. And I never told everyone, here's a date, make sure you watch them before.
Right. We never put it on the books.
Like, we should do that next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're not
watch the episodes.
Severance.
No.
This time
Rob's putting his foot down. Severance is getting through today.
Yeah, I've only got 2 more to go.
Even though it's not as good as Counterpart, it's still, you should check out Counterpart, though. Here's the part. Okay.
Isn't the problem that Counterpart had 2 good seasons and then just ended?
No, it was canceled after 2 seasons.
That's what I mean. It did not have a resolution.
Yes, but I would say, like, the character arcs are still really satisfying through those 2 seasons. And it, so much of Severance is cribbing from, like, beats in Counterpart that it's a little scary. But it's still a cool show. I dig it. Anyway, all that's coming up in some fashion or another. And if that sounds good to you, or you just want more Waypoint, you go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're also helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here. Also, look, fair warning. We've been telling you, like, these mugs at waypointgeneralstore.com, they're not here forever. They're not long for this world. Could be the day of their execution Is it well, that's maybe more dire than I want to be. But
Yeah. We might
I
take
am just
them down.
saying.
Rob's gonna find a box of mugs and just fucking.
I am
hit them
just
with a
saying there's
hammer.
never been a better time to get your Waypoint mug than right now.
I'm so excited for the Waypoint mug buyback program. coming in the coming months.
Well, the problem is, like, given how this works in the corporate world, we'll do that and then immediately turn around and fire you and Cado. Because that, like, can't give the Waypoint Plus backers. They need to dip their beak. They need to enjoy the benefits. And unfortunately, that did come out of our revenues, but our backers are very happy. Sorry about your jobs.
Pain.
Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we are calling time on this week. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home. Make sure that fridge is shut before you go on vacation. For real. Like, just, you know what?
What's the over under
Common
that
problem.
when they're listening to this, we're doing a stream buying you, looking at fridges for you.
We might be. We'll see.
Go look at twitch.tv/waypoint just in case.
That would require us doing work on a day in which we're supposed to be off of work early. We talked about not falling into that
We
trap.
could do it early. Make it a morning stream.
We're never that early.
Okay.
It's still going to be middle of the day. On the other hand,
10:30.
we're just, you know what?
We're up for that meeting usually.
We love doing that content so much. That's the Waypoint Plus promise. We do it for you. All right. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Peace. At your workplace, and you realize the union could address a lot of it. Be right back.
Maybe that's Rob's Steam Deck.
That's probably the Steam Deck, isn't it?
That'd be really funny if it was the Steam Deck. I would
Podcast
laugh
turns into
really
a
hard
unboxing.
if this turns into a live unboxing of Rob's Steam Deck. I was, oh yeah.
Wow, look at the size of that power brick.
Oh, there's a charger in here. Wow, didn't expect that. Oh, nice. Oh, this is my Rob voice. Oh, nice. Yeah, cool. It's me, Rob. It's me, Rob. Oh, hi, Rob.
Hey.
It does seem like the kind of game that would also be very enjoyable in a handheld form.
Yeah, I also. Oh, we can move on.
Well, we'll just take a break here, and we can circle back to Hardspace next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here and circle back to Hardspace next week.
Oh boy.
Fucking dumb.
I absolutely know that Cado's going to leave that in, too.
Yeah, it's gonna be in there somewhere.
Little
Gotta
fucking
figure out
dumb
where
as
it's
hell.
gonna go somewhere.
All right.
Silly.